gentlemen. I don't know if it's evening, but there we go. Today I'm joined by Master Chess Dojo. We're going to talk about all the chess news of the week that we have deemed newsworthy, which is about 3 or 4 articles. But we'll get on to it, and we'll make some pointless controversy out of it just to keep ourselves entertained. But I'm Rogan Joe Sloan, otherwise known as Kingslayer Sloan, and today we're going to be talking about stuff.
I was worried you weren't going to introduce yourself there for a moment, Rogan, as Rogan Joe Sloan. And I usually prefer to be known as John MacArthur, but we have to promote our streaming handles, Chess Dojo and Kingslayer Sloan. However, as much as I'm not a self-promoter, the nature of what we're doing is requiring.
We're in a bad industry if we can't self-promote.
Right? It's made me be a different person. I have to stand up for myself, make sure that I'm noticed in certain circles, stuff like that. Which makes me sort of indicate that maybe Levy is onto something. In order to be among the elite, you do need to have a larger ego. And I don't know that an ego can be trained, but I think it can, given my relative development as a person streamer.
I mean, I feel like that was a
Have you felt that
segue
at all?
there. I can smell a segue, But hang on, yeah, I do feel that you gotta have a little bit of something in there somewhere. It's like hating wood and being a wood carver. You can't do it. You
can't do it. You're just gonna have to.
Just gotta kiss the bullet occasionally. But yeah, that is very true.
Because when I first started streaming, I didn't necessarily want anybody to know that I was streaming at first, and I had a nice small community of which you were one of them, and Quadraspassky and many others. Andreas Pirelli, I remember. I miss him from Italy. I haven't seen him in some time, the COVID years. And then slowly, it wasn't just you. I think there were 2 or 3 others that started their own started their own streams shortly afterwards, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say something, but I forgot.
I mean, after all, that's all right. After all, I made it look like if I can do it, then anybody with...
I wouldn't put it that way, John, but...
I was so bad. No, I was so bad in the beginning that, I had my influences too. Honestly, I had Fiona Steele Antoni, who is not necessarily a spring chicken like the Botez sisters were, or Chiu Zhao, aka Nemsko, or Gotham Chess, all of those kids that were streaming before we got into it, or around the time we got into it. It's like you're going to have to actually, get your both feet into the pool and start swimming like you belong there. Otherwise, you sink.
Yeah, what was I going to say? God damn, my brain is just not braining right now. But yeah, no, there is something to whatever you just said. I forgot what you said. My God, my brain is short circuiting.
I think it's time for a nap.
Yeah. I'm just, I need whatever medication Joe Biden is on right now. Just to keep me awake.
There you go.
Well, oh yeah, I picked a terrible time to start streaming. It's like buying Bitcoin now. I think that would,
Well, so much of our pre-stream conversation should be captured because I think that it's.
But then a lot of it's just ramble,
and I'm going to push for it. I'm going to push for it again then, because I think we can do all the research that we haven't done on the fly, and we already come to the podcast with a certain number of issues that we wanted to talk about. For example, the one that you just mentioned before, or the one that I started to mention, which you brought to my attention, Levy's statement that you need a very big ego to be among the elite, and you have to think like that, and I think that is absolutely true. And if you haven't got that ego, then you are going to have to grow one.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
I mean, it's to be fair, I think there's a little bit of a. Do you have to have an ego to be there, or did you grow one to be there? Is it self-selection, or is it a thing you develop? I don't know.
I absolutely think that you grow one if you don't already have one. You may have the seeds of an ego. After all of us have the ego enough to look out for ourselves, the the gene of self-preservation, gene of getting the job done at all costs and not wanting to fail at anything, wanting to succeed and do the best possible job. That's what drives us as a human race, to do better than we did yesterday.
Yeah, I mean,
in almost every aspect.
To be fair, I mean, losing to a low-rated player will drive you into insanity. It's yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely accuse anybody lower rated than me of cheating, especially if I were.
Yeah. Like
not that we're talking about anyone
at
in
some
particular.
rating level. You're just not even supposed to lose anymore. It's like
Yep.
it's like
It's like the Yankees.
If I was 2,800,
the Yankees
2,600 beat me on an off day. The accusation would come quickly to my lips. Personally, I'd be saying, "Oh, that guy's either cheating or, I don't know, something along those lines." Mind you, I'm not Magnus Carlsen, so I don't know. But yeah. But yeah, so I mean, so what we are referencing indirectly or directly, of course, is a article in The Guardian, which is, The Guardian. I mean, come on, let's be honest. There's better news sources out there, but it's okay.
One of the top Commonwealth papers.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, damning of faint praise almost.
Isn't that where you just go to page 6? You just go to page 6 in The Guardian, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. That's the one where all the good stuff is. Anyway, so they're interviewing Livy Rosman, and he is talking about all the pitfalls of, well, his chosen career and other similar occupations, such as being a professional chess player. And Livy, and notable quote that stood out to us was, "To be an elite chess player," Rosman says, "you need to have a ridiculous ego. He realized when he ran his chess program that he enjoys controlling 5." Whoa, okay, I didn't read that bit of the quote. It's not annoying. It's just I didn't see it. Yeah. So basically, basically he's just with that kind of brought us into the conversation we were having last week about male versus female chess players as its general demographic.
Right.
We were trying to delve deeper into the different factors,
psyche of men and women,
and to the different factors that would mean a difference in distribution of chess talent, basically. So we were trying to figure out what factors go into that, and I just thought that related nicely back to last week's conversation. But yeah,
it does, and I touched upon it briefly, or at least I thought about it briefly when I thought of the very or relative sweetheart Carissa Yip winning the U.S. Women's Championship with such a ferocious attitude at the board. But of course, as you might say, she's only doing that against other women because she's not. I
think there's a massive difference between Clarissa Yip and the Garry Kasparov level of literally looking at you like you're a piece of meat. Well, if you've seen any videos of Garry Kasparov, he looks like he wants to physically throw down, basically.
He looks like a wild boar charging the forest.
Yeah. And that's that level of just, why is this person even at the same board as me? That level of just that ego that's needed to be in the top part of your sport, I believe.
On the other half of that coin, because it's one of my favorite phrases lately, it seems, I believe that if Carissa Yip had not been able to play in girls only events, she would be a different type of wild boar charging most of the men in the field. She would have developed at a slightly higher level. This is also Judith Polgar's theory from some time back, as she mentioned that if the women had not isolated themselves away from the men, then they would automatically acclimatize to their natural levels amongst the ranks of the men. Rather than being the top of the heap among women, they would actually climb that much harder, that much faster if they had said temperament that you or I could ever have reason to doubt that they have. Because if they do have that temperament to be able to climb to the top in this particular field, if you took that field away and put them in the general population of players, and that was all they had to deal with, they actually might prevail similarly without necessarily having such a low ceiling to hurdle over.
Yeah, but then you've always got this self-selection
That's
thing,
Susan
haven't you?
Polgar's theory, and I know that but I know that it worked for her because she's an absolute sweetheart herself. She's a very kind
Yeah,
person,
yeah,
and she does rip people to shreds in a different field because she never played in women's events and
yeah.
she never played. Susan Polgar, on the other hand, while she was the top of her field among women, at the end, because she shifted over to claim the spot as a women's world champion, rather than retire,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Judith Polgar could have easily decided, before I retire, let me just claim the title of women's champion on my way out the door. And she probably could have done it by exhale with her level of strength. She could have just done it, probably popped it off. And then upon winning the Women's World Championship, she could have said, all right, now I can announce my retirement, having achieved this one last, just like her sister
I do
did.
have a small
And
difference of opinion there. It's like she believes that if you acclimatize if you play in the men's events that you'll do that. But I mean, yeah, maybe, but is it would you acclimatize
we all know
because
what
of that, or would you acclimatize because it's a self-selection bias that anybody who is willing to go into the men events is probably a killer anyway, and so that's a self-selection sort of
well, let's
deal.
just call it the open event.
It's like the
As I was corrected the other day by Danny Roden, a local and national organizer here in the United States. Danny Roden mentioned that the open event should always be referred to as the open event because they do have a choice of playing in the open event. It's not exclusively only dedicated. It's just the fact that the women's events are there, that women gravitate toward that, let's say, calmer waters, swimming or Olympic pool rather than the Olympic pool where all of the heavy hitters are playing.
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
And of
there's
course,
always the self-selection bias that always comes in whenever people say if this was this, then people would do that. I mean, maybe not. I mean, I think if you only look at one factor, then it's really easy to go astray. But I believe anybody willing to go into the men's events might not be acclimatizing faster because of that. They might be acclimatizing faster because to play in the men's events, you have to be a killer from the start. Yeah, it's like that's my opinion. You're not acclimatizing faster. You're simply already the animal that would do something like that.
you're going with the nature versus
Yeah, yeah.
nurture. And I'm a huge fan of nurture, though. I am a huge fan of nurture because I've taken many students who, by nature, are not crushers and help them become national champions. So I know that it can be done, whether they're girls or boys for the most part. You basically have to give them a support system for their belief in themselves that already exists because we all have a certain amount of self confidence, and that certain amount of self confidence needs to be grown into the mountain of ego that Levy is asking us to have in order to reach the elite of our field. So, for example, when I lived in the Midwest, had I stayed in the Midwest, I would think that I am the top of the totem pole. Whereas if I wanted to become a master in short order, which I did, I moved to New York or I moved to the East Coast. And within the space of a year and a half, let me think about this, a year and a half, roughly it took me a year and a half to break 2,200.
Mm.
Whereas I could have perpetually remained in the high 1900s or low 2000s in the Midwest and thought that I was the top of the barrel back then. Anyway, back in the day. If I did not move to New York, I would not have become a master. I simply would not have become a master as quickly as I did. I would have just been content to be where I was and be at the top of my field. It's the same thing with the men and the women, I believe, or with any young player who doesn't have it. Take a look at Dinglerin, right? Does this guy strike you as the type of player to go hunting or to go ferociously beating down the bastions of the elite like Garry Kasparov? he doesn't strike me as that type of person. I believe that he acquired those skills as part of his training and encouragement and support by others who told him that he does have it in him. He does have the resourcefulness. He does have the creativity, and he does have the stamina to outlast somebody like Nicole Nishi.
To be fair, with Ding Liren, though, I think it's a little bit harder to tell if he's got that level of ego simply because, well, I mean, I would say because, yeah, his English is not, like, terribly amazing. It's hard to display vast amounts of ego when you can't really, it's hard to put massive, being massively, it's hard, when you can't really.
It's true.
Yeah, it's like it's harder to see. It's more of a humble, Chinese fella.
Culturally, the modesty of the Asian culture kind of limits them from being so outspoken about. Just because it's in their culture not to necessarily be so outspoken about their belief in their own.
But yes,
prowess.
I see your point. I mean, I see your point.
So he's not allowed to culturally do that. Otherwise, he might lose face with his family or his friends or like that. So you tend to work much more quietly behind the scenes on all of that. And you're right. He may have it, and we just may not see it because of the ability to express oneself as well in another language.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is important. I mean, but I mean, yeah, I think but all we know is that whether it is nature or nurture, every single person in the top 100 probably has the absolute disbelief that a person sitting in front of them is even in the same league as them. That level of.
Well, I know two young players, the top two young players of American origin to a certain extent. I'm going to put in the dogfight here. A very young Fabiano Caruana, who was very timorous, kind, shy. And then you had Hikaru Nakamura, who was very much the lion of his group. He was very much the believer in his ability, very much the assertive person, where if he lost to a grandmaster whom he did not believe worthy, he would let them know about it in so many words, even though he wasn't of a high enough rating. He would tell Joel Benjamin where to put himself after the game if he lost to Joel Benjamin. He would, and Joel's like, I'm 400 rating points higher than this guy, and or John Fedorowicz. I'm doing more of a John Fedorowicz impression. I'm 400 rating points higher than this guy, and can you believe what he said to me after I beat him? Not can you analyze the game.
Yeah.
Not can I learn anything from you. He told me where to stick it.
I mean, to be fair, Hikaru does have a history of that sort of stuff. He does.
And on the other hand, you had Fabiano, who was the kindest, sweetest, shyest young man. I know both of them since they were not quite single digits for Hikaru. I don't know that I really knew him before the age of 10, although I had seen him.
I mean,
necessarily
GM Hess recalls some bit of a childhood rivalry with old Fabi.
Yeah, but no. Well, Hikaru was much older by about a half a dozen years or so. But Mark Arnold and Fabiano Caruana and Robert Hess were all three in the same age bracket within 6 or so months. So they were always leapfrogging each other for the number one player status in the United States. So every time one of them had a birthday, they would swap places depending on who was ahead, who was behind. So Robert Hess would be number one in the country. But this is well before he's becoming a grandmaster. He'd be 2000 rated, 9-year-old or whatever. And Mark Arnold would be 2000 X, and they would all leapfrog each other at any given time within the month for the number one junior in the country for their age bracket. And then one of them or the other would have a birthday, and they would just all leapfrog each other routinely all the way up the roster, all the way up the list to when they were, 15, 16 years old until you have the best players in the country under the age of 16. Yeah. Although Fabiano left when he was in 7th or 8th grade, I don't know that he was in New York City for high school, secondary school.
But our overarching point is there's a lot of competitiveness there. Everyone's got a Hikaru story. Everyone's got a Hikaru story.
Yeah, I know. But I know for Fabiano's story, it was nurture. it was nurture. He is a pure talent. The ego side of it and the can-do-itness, the technical skills and the belief systems and the I'm going to beat this person, I'm going to prepare for this person, and I'm going to take them down. That belief system was to a great extent and had to be nurtured in Fabiano rather than Hikaru. I almost guarantee it, because knowing him from a young age, he was wily. Yes, he was creative. Yes, he was inventive, and he was resourceful. But he was at heart a very nice, easygoing fellow, unlike the other player whom we know much better because he's more outspoken about it. And I can imagine Anish Giri is also held back by a similar thing. I think Anish Giri, I would put him in the same ilk as Fabiano Caruana.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the only people who I can see that don't have this, this amazing hate to lose, mentality, or at least at least aren't so upwardly confident, is maybe Peter Svidler, and Topalov maybe. Topalov's the only person who I haven't seen that does not look completely pissed to lose. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but Peter Svidler doesn't seem to, he doesn't seem to have that level of ego. Or maybe he hides it.
No, he does not. No, he's a much nicer guy too. I also agree that Peter Svidler I would put into the second category of nurture, where he has that drive perhaps, but he's also a super nice, easygoing guy, and to have the ego behind the technical skill. And I do believe Levy is right, because almost every strong player I've met, whether it's Grandmaster Joel Benjamin, or I should say good friends with John Fedorowicz, they've got this bravado behind their technical skills that allows them to empower great feats, empowers them toward great feats. I remember the year that the late Grandmaster Alex Scherzer, rest his soul, he was such a sweetheart of a guy, but there was one year when he had the tournament of his life. He had the best U.S. championship ever, and he was the nicest guy that was going to ever win the U.S. championship, such a sweetheart of a guy. And he had a pairing with John Fedorowicz in the last round. And, a draw was all that was needed. And John Fedorowicz looked him in the eye and goes, "Today is not going to be your day." He didn't say it out loud, but he basically takes poor Alex Scherzer to the cleaners, and then Patrick Wolf becomes U.S. champion. Grandmaster Patrick Wolf, who has the ego of 10 worlds, or at least did then. And I, as much as I love Patrick, I remember I was in a bar with Patrick Wolf, and I asked him, what does it take to be at the top of the chess world as a grandmaster, or at least in the United States or elsewhere? And he looked at me in the eye, even though we both were holding pints of yeast-based beverages. And he said, "John, honestly, no one's going to make it unless you are chosen by God. You have to be chosen by God." And I looked at him, I'm like,
"Okay, bud.
Oh, is that what it takes?"
Yeah, divine right of king.
And I'm like, God, this was in the pub right across the street from the Penta Hotel on 33rd Street, I believe. And we were all in there. Around that time, we were celebrating John Fedorowicz having won the New York Open in 1989. I think it was around then. It might have been a little later. But that was one of two times that I remember being in the company of all these great guys. And for them asking Patrick that question and him telling me that you have to be chosen by God, I realized that ego had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean,
even then,
that's the take if God is on my side to a very, very real level, isn't it?
He made it real. This is real now. Yeah, if God is not on your side, you're so screwed. And another similar instance happened with Garry Kasparov on many of my interactions. I remember he played a match when Gadakomsky first defected to New York City. They played an exhibition match at the library on 42nd Street, the world-famous New York Public Library on 42nd Street with all the lovely decor and everything. And I wasn't even sure I was going to get back in, but Michael Khodorkovsky, one of the organizers, sort of turned around and said Garry Kasparov needs tonic water, and apparently there's no beverages here in the library, obviously. So I said, sure, I'll run across the street and, grab a tonic water for Garry, and at whatever moment when I'm leaving the library through the side door, I'm realizing, how am I getting back into the library? Because it's a closed event, right? Yeah. It's a very exclusive event that I've been lucky enough to attend. And that was also around 1989, 1990 or so, maybe late 1988. And for the most part, I run, get his tonic water, whatever, hand it to him. You don't get so much as a thank you. He's just like, that's it, gone, whatever, It's like, and then years later, when Garry had retired and he became a father, and his little one goes to school here in New York, and he lives on the west side. He was taking her to the park and all of that. He began sponsoring the New York City Scholastic Chess Championships along with the Kasparov Girls National Championship in Chicago each year. And I was in the office at the end of the day. I think he'd finished his book signing or whatnot. Grandmaster Michael Rode and I are in the office with the tournament directors and the international arbiter. Sophia Rode may not have been there at the time. But Garry Kasparov comes in, Michael Khodorkovsky comes in, and he's saying, he's just checking out, to let the organizers know that the event has come to a close. And then he puts out his hand to shake my hand. And I sort of look at it like, what is that? And then, of course, I shake his hand, right? Because I'm feeling embarrassed if I don't shake his hand, because I'm totally not expected to be civil. And then he turns and he puts his hand out for Michael Rode. And Michael Rode sort of stands there and looks at the hand. like, what is that? Yeah. And he, of course, shakes it too. And then Garry and Michael Khodorkovsky leave. And we look at each other and we go, who was that? What did he do with the real Garry Kasparov? It was like, what happened? He retired, and he no longer had to be the ferocious,
he got mellow,
rip everyone to shreds.
He mellowed out a little.
Yeah, he was a nice, fatherly figure. And then I've often told the story of seeing him carrying groceries on the west side of Manhattan. And we're crossing paths on the same side of the street. And I just sort of lightly smile at him, and he nods, because he seems to remember me. And I'm like, I nod back, just keep on walking our merry way. And I'm fairly certain that he recognizes me because he recognized me because my wife had also met him over the course of one of those many, many occasions. And when he was with his daughter in the park, he acknowledged her, and she's like looking at this guy going, who is this guy? And then she calls me and goes, after a moment, she goes, John, I think Garry Kasparov is in the park with his daughter, but I don't really believe this is the same guy. And I said, yeah, that's him.
Okay, goodness. Damn.
But yeah, he basically had changed back. He transformed back to the role model of father that he needed to be, the kind-hearted fellow that we all want to be, and he a great grandfather. If you can imagine him being so loving.
If he doesn't have a bad collision with a Putin or something.
Yeah, he should not. He should stay out of Russia, please. If he wants to live a long and prosperous life, absolutely.
Yeah.
But no, but he had that role as a world champion, and I don't fault him for it. I understood it completely, that need to be that person in order to be among the elite, the best of the best, literally the best of the best. As we were talking earlier, we were alluding to who could be the greatest chess player of all time, right?
Of course.
Certainly, in his own qualifications, there was an interview recently that I caught. I don't know if it's 12 or less than 20 minutes long, but he was answering this question in an interview, and he basically said that he was number one in the world for almost 20 years ahead of everyone else. 5 years after he was world champion, he still remained number one while Kramnik was world champion. And there are others like Magnus Carlsen who are also heads and shoulders above everyone. For what now? I think it's close. It's not quite 20 years, but Magnus Carlsen may soon be closing on that mark. I think he needs to make it to keep his number one title to 2025. I think to be number one in the world for 20. And the other person that would be, of course, in the running, Bobby Fischer. as Gary Kasparov referred to him, he was hundreds of rating points ahead of the second place person.
But longevity wasn't there.
For his day, the longevity obviously wasn't there, but he was so far ahead of everybody else that every time he drew a game, he'd lose like 4 or 8 rating points. He'd lose a half a dozen rating points every time he drew Spassky in 1972. So every time he drew a game, he'd lose 6 rating points. Which is incredible because.
But then competition comes into it, doesn't it? Is it, you know, could you say that his competition was possibly worse or not as elite, or, you know, comparatively not as elite?
Definitely, they were not as elite. They weren't as well prepared as today's players. Today's players are so well rounded, right? They're so much better educated thanks to database-driven society, whether it's chess-based, the preparation that's allowed by the engines and things like that, the better-known defensive methods and schemes. Quite incredible.
Quite indeed. Okay, so I do believe we had some other things to talk about today, despite my wish to. I mean, I believe the US Championship has just concluded, and with the prize giving this, well, not too long ago.
The award ceremony just earlier this evening.
Yes, and which
we happened to catch it live by accident, which delayed our podcast a little bit.
To be fair, I mean,
creating other technical difficulties,
among other things. But yeah, so in conclusion, what happened, John? What happened?
Well, I'm happy to say that Fabiano Caruana clinched what I think is his 5th U.S. champion title. Might be a 6th, so I apologize if I'm off by 1 because I was so shocked by the results in the U.S. Women's Championship that it's kind of erased my mind of unfortunately Fabiano's complete dominance in the U.S. Championship cycle, and it even apparently of the past 12 months, I think of the 12 or so most recent events, I think Fabiano Caruana has topped and dominated maybe 4 of them. So he's like heads and shoulders above the rest of the field in certain events. And the U.S. Championship, he proved himself to be among the world's elite. Like I would love to say that Wesley So is in there, but Wesley So has not been a candidate for the World Championship twice. I would love to say that the other players like Lanier Dominguez are on his heels, but they're really not of the same ilk as where he is right now. He really disposed to the field. The Mishra, let me just go with Mishra. Mishra, the 14-year-old Grandmaster Challenger, the youngest player in the field by far, was tied for second, and he went all out against Fabiano in the penultimate round. And in the in the 10th of 11th round of 11 rounds, he went all out to try to beat Fabiano. Ended up down in exchange, fought very hard, lost, and then with a round to spare, no one could catch Fabiano. And it just proved his dominance. And on the women's side, however, the event that, and I have to admit, in Carissa's closing speech, she said that there were commentators that were somewhat rooting against her. I even saw indications of what she was talking about in the notifications on Twitter and other things I saw. I think the 9th round was when a post was made. Finally, this was the post that was broadcast by the St. Louis Chess Twitter account. Finally, I'm going to butcher her name here all of a sudden without having it.
It's all right, John. Butcher it. Butcher it all you want.
Butcher it and get it over with.
Over here, you know? You can't be in the meat business without a bit of butchering.
All right, Begim. I'm just going to call her Begim Tokarenova. I think she goes by Begim rather than Gulrukh Begim Tokarenova. Begim, so the Twitter account read, finally, Begim breaks free of the tie for first and leads with, 8.5 or 8 out of 9 points, while Carissa could only draw her game. And that was the publicity post. And
let's take a 5,000
Carissa
feet
was
in the
right.
air.
I think that everybody was rooting for Begim. But I know why now. I do know why.
Let's take a nice look. What's the best light you can put that one in? What's they were like, oh, this was a long drawn out game, maybe, that they were grinding, and then they're like, finally the game's over. This result's happened, or is it finally the person we want?
No, they had been tied they had the exact same score for 8 rounds in a row. They had the exact same score.
Right.
They
Okay.
drew with each other. They beat all the other players. They had the exact same score for 8 rounds in a row.
So should the other person with the 8...
Carissa draws.
Okay. But should...
And Begum wins. And she's got 8 out of 10.
But should the other person would the title have been the same? Finally, the other, finally there's there's a different result. Are you sure? Like, I mean...
No, it wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been the same, because Begum is a local from St. Louis. I believe that she is a local friendly in the St. Louis area, and that is what they were. They had a little bit more of a friendly rooting for. And Carissa in her speech mentioned it outright, and she goes in a joking fashion. She mentioned it. And we'll be talking about. We'll have a few words about that later. She said we'll have a few words about that later. Just
because Clarissa suspects something doesn't mean it to be true. I mean, okay, let's be nice. Let's be nice. Let's be nice here and follow my general rule: never attribute to malice what you can do to coincidence or any other normal thing.
I was attributing it to her humor. It was mostly her humor. She was joking about it in the speech. She was actually making a little bit of a joke about it. And until the final rounds award ceremony, I did not know that she was a local from St. Louis. But then there's another question. I, in fact, did not know that much about her.
There's another question that comes from this, I think. Should commentators be allowed to be biased? Does it add another good aspect to it, or should everything be BBC down the line? I mean, to be fair, I'm not going to praise the BBC, but I'm sorry to indirectly praise the BBC, but you get the idea.
No, I agree.
Should interviewers, or not interviewers, or commentators of sports or chess, should they have to be 100% unbiased, or does that take away from the thing?
No, they want to promote the event. Yeah, they don't have to be unbiased. I'm assuming that there should be enough to go around, though. Like, let's take the Chess 24 broadcast when you have Jovanka Hauska, David Howell, and drawing a blank on the lovely commentator from Norwegian TV. Kata, yes. Each of them usually takes a different person. When one of them might show any form of favoritism, if one of them shows favoritism toward one, the other two usually latch on to others, so that way they're all equally balanced.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, and they've done that on a number of occasions where David would automatically point to the reasons to root for another person, and Jovanka will point to the other person, because being the lesser chess player, Katya might accidentally go with the favorite, rooting for the favorite, and then the other two promote the other two, which is a nice balance of commentary style, because that way you get to instill that excitement. And maybe if you favored David Howell's opinion, you might actually switch allegiances to, hey, let's hope that person.
I mean, if you don't favor David Howell's opinion, I think you're going down the road of stupidity. I mean, the guy is the authority there for a reason. I've always thought this in my head, that David Howell's back pain must be awful. He's been carrying that team.
He carries a lot of it.
From day one.
Indeed. No, I love David. I would consider him a good friend. He's a hell of a guy. He's a very nice guy as well. And that's another instance where I almost guarantee you his ego needs more nurturing in order to.
He's got that British humbleness to him
at the higher level. Yeah, he's got the British humbleness and the niceness and all of that. And when we were in London during the 2018, he even deferred to me on a couple of decisions when we were deciding on going out, because he had wanted to go to the popular part of London, which was a little bit further away, or whether we should go to karaoke, perhaps a little bit closer. And I ultimately lilted toward the toward the karaoke with Anna Rudolph, among others, who were in our crowd. We had a very strong crowd. So he was very kind to lilt to me. Whereas if this were the same crowd with Garry Kasparov, he was we're going here.
Yeah, I mean,
he wouldn't have asked me.
I mean, it's very generous of him to get to cede to your opinion, seeing as he's actually from the country. He knows where he's going. He knows bits and bobs. It's like.
Yeah, he knew better. He knew London better than me. I mean, he could have just made the decision.
He's the British man,
But he asked me what I thought they could be doing, which was kind of him. And then we all migrated in that direction. It was all good. Yeah. And I liked it.
Against awesome. Every practical really piece of advice, he included you. Good on him. I mean,
No, I mean, that wasn't the first time that I had met him. International arbiter Sophia Road had brought 5 students to London.
But you know what I mean.
3 years earlier, we'd gone to London for a Yes to Chess that was organized by International Malcolm.
What I'm trying to say, John, trying to say is if you came to New Zealand and you're like, I would take my opinion as slightly more important, just because I don't know.
I believe you should.
I don't know.
I believe you should.
Yeah.
You even told me told us in the last podcast that you had as much knowledge as anyone in the chess club. It's just the fact that it's a long game that you're not able to to prove to them that you are the stronger player.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a great bit of bravado that is what it takes to be at the next level. You already have it.
Yeah.
Whereas I never had that. I never had that. I had to acquire it on my own. I'm still acquiring it on my own. But yeah, no, when International Master, Malcolm Payne organized the Yes to Chess, which I dearly miss, he brought together, based on a global online event, 8 schools from 8 different countries to play in Hyde Park. And the winner of that event, or I guess all the participants in that event, did a simul within the Parliament building. So literally we go into the Parliament building where no tourists are usually allowed, and we're playing a simultaneous exhibition against none other than David Howell. And David Howell is fending off this young German player. And I believe the German team was actually the victor in the Yes to Chess competition. They were really, really strong. And David Howell ended up in this end game with King and Rook versus King and Bishop. And he had a favorable position that I thought he should win. And he was unable to win it, so he ended up drawing with one of his few draws. And then we spent about 30 to 45 minutes afterwards, and he took all of my opinions in this end game as seriously as any other. He was very nice about it. That was the first time I had met him when we analyzed together in London then. And it was a very different experience analyzing with David Howell versus meeting Garry Kasparov, obviously. Yeah. Knowing that level of ego, like his opinion should always be better. But he wasn't like that.
I mean, even if he believes it in his mind, he had the decency and training to give you the time of day, give you the love your opinion.
No, absolutely. Yeah, he knew me as one of the coaches. He didn't necessarily assess me as not being of the same status as him at all. It's possible that he didn't know that I wasn't a grandmaster, or he wouldn't automatically assume that I wasn't a grandmaster, maybe. Whereas Garry Kasparov would just automatically be, I'm better than anyone else. So therefore, this is the way it should be. Perhaps.
Yeah, it's like, I'm world champion. Right, I mean, that literally means I'm the best, That's right. I mean, we're probably, David might not have that sort of, I don't know, pedigree. Anyway. So, what were we talking about here? We had some other things to throw in here.
We were talking about the results of the U.S.
Championship. We were.
And in the last round, we've held the suspense long enough. After all, finally, Begim breaks the long race between her and Carissa Yip, succeed and getting ahead. And then in the next round, it was quite incredible. What happened in the 10th round, if anyone has not yet checked out the game, 10th round, the U.S. Women's Champion, you have 8-time national champion Irina Krush, whom I hold in very high regard, against Begim Turkmenova. And not only is that game a rocky one, because Irina Krush is clearly better, if not having everything under control, and perhaps should be able to technically win the game against Begim. But Carissa Yip just rips to shreds with the black pieces Anna Zatonski on an adjacent board. I mean, I don't know that it was a miniature, but I think it was less than 30 moves. It was just like zip, zip, zip. And admittedly, former U.S. women's champion Anna Zatonski, who's a sweetheart in her own right, but also a very aggressive player and a frequent member of the U.S. Olympic squad. She was not having such a good tournament. But then again, anybody who played Begim or Carissa did not have a good tournament if you were playing Carissa. However, Irina Krush allows an amazing amount of counterplay against Begim, and there's this passed pawn on c2, which is tying her down completely, and they have a position of mutual Zugzwang, and they actually repeat the position 3 times. In fact, Begim plays the move to repeat the position 3 times and does not summon the arbiter, knowing, I believe in her mind, that since Irina Krush has only 35 seconds left on her clock, and it's around move 50, by the way, so there's no more time coming. They're already on sudden death, and Irina Krush only has 30 plus seconds. Admittedly, she's living on her increment. It's a 30-second increment. Irina Krush then lunges out on the king side with the seeds or the concept of a ladder mating attack if the pawn that she sacrifices is accepted. And Begim does not adjust to the change of pace and ends up losing the game to Irina Krush. Not that she had much of a choice at this point. She was several pawns. I shouldn't say several. She was a couple of pawns down, but she had a very strong passed pawn on c2 that was protected by everything in the world with a lot of tactics to go with it. And then the thing is, and I had a long conversation with Danny Rode, the national organizer and USCF Scholastic Council member earlier today. I had a long conversation with him over the proper method of declaring a draw in the advent of the days now where you're not allowed to write down the move first. For anyone out there who does not know how to offer a draw or claim a draw by 3-time repetition, the rules are that you're not allowed to write down your move first because it's a form of note-taking in a tournament game. You can't write down your move first and then check it and then erase it, which used to be the case in the adult tournaments. As it turns out, the rule for declaring a draw by 3-time repetition is that you write down your move on the score sheet before you play it, and then you summon the arbiter, and the arbiter sees the move on your score sheet, compares the score sheet to the occurrence of a 3-time repetition of the position, a 3-time occurrence position, arbiter, Sophia Rode would say, a 3-time occurrence, it says the official wording, with the same person to move and the same properties of the position available, meaning that in one position, if both sides can castle, and then in the third position, one side is no longer able to castle because a rook has moved back and forth. That's not the same position, a 3-time occurrence. All of the rules have to be in place for all of the pieces. All the properties have to be the same. But she didn't write down her move first. She didn't summon the arbiter. I think she just automatically assumed that Irina Krush would claim the draw instead of her claiming the draw. And she went on to lose the game. And then suddenly it's Carissa Yip who is a half a point ahead. And there was no announcement that Carissa Yip has finally broken free of the long-standing rivalry between her and her rival. But in the last round, Carissa Yip is playing Ruyin Yang. I'm pronouncing it wrong. Ruyin Yan. And Jennifer Yu, the defending 2-time former champion, U.S. women's champion, is playing Begim. And as it turns out, Jennifer Yu is -3. Let's just say she's down effectively a piece in the assessment. And Carissa is stuck with a position which is very equal. So Carissa does the natural thing and goes all out to try to win her game to avoid a tiebreak and lose. I can't say that she went all out, but let's just say she pressed, made a mistake, and Carissa Yip loses her game while watching Jennifer Yu in a very difficult position against Begim. Now, I don't know about the timing of being able to see the two positions, but ultimately Begim makes a few errors. The position slips to equality, and Jennifer Yu takes over and saves the day, and both players lose that were leading the tournament, and Carissa Yip remain in the lead. Hail, hail. we have a 2-time U.S. women's, and I'm very proud of her because she is a nice addition to the elite women's division of the U.S. Chess Society to a certain extent. She's, certainly going to be a clobberer on a grand scale should she put her mind to it. So I'm very happy for her. I was very interested I knew nothing about Turcharanova, and I was very interested if she really was the real deal, but it wasn't her time just yet, as it turns out, even though she had all the support from the local St. Louis crowd.
Okay, I mean, that seems like a pretty decent summary of all things happening in the Women's US Championship.
So the last 3 rounds are definitely worth checking out. They're quite incredible. The U.S. Women's Championship actually made.
I mean, yes. I mean, John was very, very excited for the Women's Championship. There, he appreciates the chess that went down.
Made an amazing comeback. Yeah, Irina Krush made an amazing comeback. She's truly a worthy fighter. I'm proud to say that I'm very happy for her 8 U.S. Women's Championship title. I was also the arbiter, or one of the assistant arbiters, for one of her Grandmaster Norm achieving events. And long after the late Jerry Bibbold was no longer with us, FIDE accepted my international Grandmaster Norm certificate because the original one had been lost or not filed properly, or had been FIDE did not have it for whatever reason. So I filed for Irina to become a Grandmaster for one of the tournaments that I helped direct many years before. In fact, it was a Susan Polgar organized Grandmaster Norm event, I should say, that was done in Flushing. A lovely tournament with very nice, accommodation, very nice environment and atmosphere. Susan Polgar was a great contributor to U.S. Chess's organization for women's events and making it possible for players of all ages to accomplish more.
Like every episode, something good has happened for Indian chess. Grandmaster, oh goodness, Karith Ikean Morali has okay, calm down. Has managed to.
I just call him Kian. How about call him Kian, like as in our good friend Kian Chess Coach. Okay. Who streams on Twitch. Yeah. Kian, I'm fairly certain that his name is exactly the same as Kalakian. Let's just call him Kalakian.
Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you really repaired that one, like John. Kian. Nice save. Okay. Has managed to do something extraordinary. He is the second Indian player after Vishwanath to beat world number 1 Magnus Carlsen in classical chess. Basically, he scored a very, very nice win with the black piece in the 7th round of the Qatar Masters in 2023, which I'm paraphrasing, of course. The Grandmaster from, oh my God. The Grandmaster from India played a picture-perfect game. One mistake from Magnus, and he captured the edge and converted the game smoothly. Okay. So he is now joining the lead in the tournament with 5.5 points out of. So his performance rating is in the 2800s, despite his rating only being in the 2600s.
Right. That was reported by ChessBase India. Sagar Shah does an amazing job with his wife. ChessBase India, if you do not subscribe to their YouTube, not to mention ours, they provide a lot of news as well and information on their site, and they cover a lot of the major events, including the Qatar Masters. Basically, Sagar later clarified through ChessBase India, I'm positive that it was him, that Pentala Harikrishna had also beaten Magnus Carlsen in 2005 in a classical game, but Magnus Carlsen was very young then, and he was not number 1 in the world. So I think ChessBase India clarified, make sure that everyone is on the same page, that the world number 1 player has only been beaten by 2 Indian players in classical. The world number 1 player, Magnus Carlsen, has only been beaten by Anand.
Magnus in his current form only been beaten twice. in his current form as number one.
Only been beaten twice by Indian players. I guess Prag's win was
Time control.
everybody who remembers Praggnanandhaa beating was a rapid game.
What about Isaping? Oh no, that's he's not Indian. Right, sorry, I was like I missed it in my head. Anyway, yes, so has Magnus accused him of cheating yet?
Nope, not yet, but we do expect that tweet to come around at any time.
Okay.
It only happened today, so should you
give him time? Come on, we can't expect things too
soon. Give him time. Yeah, he hasn't had this fifth pint yet.
Yeah, it's like I have to be cheap, Goodness me. Hans Niemann has been
but Magnus Carlsen lost in the second round when I was watching Magnus Carlsen in a very difficult position to Suleimanov. Alisher Suleimanov in round 2, a 2,500 rated player, basically took advantage of all of Magnus Carlsen's mistakes and won against Magnus Carlsen. And even in that chat, as that game was happening, everyone thought that Magnus would ruin another professional chess player's career with certain allegations. And he did actually come out with allegations, which he later denied he was referring to Suleimanov in any way.
Yeah, it was like it was the guy. It was the guy I lost to.
He made allegations about cheating. Suddenly, after losing, he refers to allegations of cheating in chess, but he didn't really mean to talk about the only suspect.
Yeah, the only person who's beaten him. Yeah. That's like no. The guy I beat was cheating
that day or recently.
The guy I beat was cheating. Yeah.
Yeah.
That Stockfish is nothing.
I believe your TikTok friend that you had beaten, I think, who's 2,200 on chess.com.
No, I drew him.
Had a good quote about that one.
I drew him back.
Oh, you drew him?
That was when he was a lot worse. We coincidentally played from the random pool, and and now he's a TikToker. He's a TikTok chess person of much notoriety.
And he's a very, very well-known TikTok chess person. That is Chess Haha.
Yeah.
No, Christoph
Haha. Anyway, yeah. So we played a few years ago, and he's only been getting better since, putting me to shame with its very existence. But that's it's all right. I'm okay with it. I promise I'm okay with it.
But I believe Christoph Haha said in a social media post to Magnus Carlsen, if you did not accuse Suleimanov of cheating, why did you heavily insinuate it? Because you could have expressed your problems with the anti-cheating measures after round 1 instead of you waited until you were defeated in brilliant fashion by a young player in round 2 and then decided to comment.
Yeah.
About
suddenly
cheating.
Magnus had a problem.
I paraphrased his quote a little bit.
Yeah.
I will admit that I paraphrased his social media quote. But this was in reply to a Twitter post by Magnus Carlsen, by the way, who somewhat denigrated Hikaru Nakamura for cashing in on Magnus accusing Suleimanov of cheating.
To be fair.
Once again, Hikaru pumped up his numbers.
Of course.
And Magnus Carlsen's statement, and I'll put this in quotes, just to be clear, from Magnus Carlsen, I am not accusing my opponent today of cheating. And he's referring to and referencing Hikaru, and I'll continue the quote, constantly using my name for clicks is fine, but this is just lame. Do better. And Hikaru's YouTube post is Magnus loses and then accused. And we've already seen this somewhere before. I think we'll leave that nameless, whatever incident that was.
Does it rhyme with Meeman? Hans Demon. I feel like we've heard this before. Yes, Hikaru was.
He's a real He-Man.
Yeah.
He's a real He-Man.
We've seen this before. I do believe there's a bit of a problem. It's not a problem. It's just a general annoyance. It's we saw this in the Hans Niemann Magnus Carlsen controversy where. Yep. Hikaru does this whole clown nose on, guys. Then does this little weird facial expression. Oh, I'm sure he wasn't cheating. All this is very sus, guys. He's doing everything. He's doing everything but putting neon lights on it. And then suddenly when Hans Niemann gets all lawyered up and he suddenly goes, "That
Yeah.
was just a
Then
joke."
everybody
Clown
claimed.
nose right back on. I promise I had nothing to do with destroying your reputation by these legal statutes here.
Yeah. And of course, we added a new player in the mix as Gotham Chess actually posted a YouTube video about a half an hour long about the new cheating chess scandal.
Oh, goodness.
And
Everything's
with a nice
fucking half an hour
proudly
long.
displayed Magnus Carlsen picture with shattered glass across Magnus Carlsen's framed photo. And Gotham Chess is capitalizing on it. And his quote is, "New cheating chess scandal." And that's the title of the YouTube video. And Gotham Chess goes, hold my beer.
The only problem I have with Levy Rosman,
that was by 64 Square.
The only problem I have with Levy Rosman is with every single little minor controversy. It's not only is it pumped up, but the video's 26 minutes at least. Yeah. I mean, it amazes me.
Well, he knows how to sell.
It amazes me how long
he is the master.
Yeah, well, it amazes me how long he can spread out the most basic of the smallest of controversies. He is truly talented and making 26 minutes worth of content out of absolutely almost nothing. But we can't really talk. We've been talking for an hour here.
Very good.
We've been talking.
Oh no, we've covered several events, if not 4, 5, plus some human interest on the greatest of all time, controversial between the top 3, living, but no longer living, Bobby Fischer, Magnus Carlsen, and Garry Kasparov. And we've brought in a lot of the pack to a great extent, and we've covered almost everything that we wanted to cover, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. It was quite a packed, and we got in our previous controversies between women and men in chess.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
how they're treated. I think we've done very well.
We angered our respective all the respective people. But we've made sure that we won't get work anywhere.
So the gentleman that beat Magnus Carlsen today, Karthikeyan Murali,
rest in peace,
has not yet had his. Yeah, may his chess career rest in peace. Is tied for first, and Magnus Carlsen is relegated to 28th position on the pairing chart. And tomorrow plays against veteran, suspected by me of being Carissa Yip's coach, Gregory Kaidanov, who has been a stalwart and amazing chess trainer here in the United States for quite some time. And Gregory Kaidanov is no slouch, and I'm very impressed that he is still playing as he participates in the U.S. Senior Championship. Hikaru Nakamura is in the same score group with Gregory Kaidanov, but did not get the same pairing with Magnus Carlsen. But Hikaru Nakamura and Gregory Kaidanov from the United States are in the 5-point score group out of 8 rounds, behind the tournament leaders with 5.5, with another USA player, Gregory Oparin, U.S. Grandmaster. So we have a ton of Indian players. This is the Qatar Masters that we're talking about, where Magnus Carlsen is going to make or break careers with a single tweet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
if we find.
What an awesome.
Anish Giri also is in that same pack. Anish Giri, Gregory Kaidanov, and Hikaru Nakamura all have 5 points, which brings it to me to wonder how Gregory Kaidanov with 5 points. He must be the lowest rated person with 5. That's all I can imagine. He must be the lowest rated person with 5 points because he is playing Magnus Carlsen, who has 4.5 points out of 8 and no chance of winning the tournament with the number of rounds as it turns.
Oh, I don't know.
So it's going to be very hard to break Gregory Kaidanov's career because he's been a veteran. But I wish him all the best tomorrow against Magnus.
I mean,
Gukesh, by the way, is right next to Darush, the other top 10 player in the world. Dharmashan Gukesh is right there with Magnus with 4.5 points as well. So they're both struggling just a little bit, as it turns out.
I mean, nothing wrong with the good old.
We'll follow this more later.
We will follow this with great intent. Now, Ivanchuk has been known, John, to go out into the forest and scream the demons away. So I was thinking, what in the chess world has you pissed off? We'll get rid of all all the bad energy. You get to
I
purge it on.
am I now the chess world's Alan Kessler? What's bothering you now, Alan? Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. No, I think we'll cover these events next time. There was one note that I saw Sam Shankland struggling in the U.S. Championship, and I noticed that he is very casual, relaxed demeanor at the board, and is in. And I'm going to be as a beard person myself, as I've had a beard for many years, and I usually keep it and know the difficulties in trying to keep it groomed. I noticed that during the course of a tournament, if you have extra facial hair or things like that, or many of you have seen Magnus Carlsen with his hair all over the place, as you will see it possibly in the current event, you actually have to pay attention to such detail at the chessboard that it is reflected in your personal appearance as well. This was brought to my attention by Tiger Hillart Persson, who I had the pleasure of being in his company with many times while I was playing and coaching in Oslo at the Oslo Schakelskap on Bogstadveien Road on 30 Bogstadveien. Trying to remember their name, Gata, Bogstadveien Gata. That's their word for street. And Tiger Hillart Persson, when I first met him, told me what it took for him to become a grandmaster. And I remember Tiger Hillart Persson as a young international master walking into tournaments with cut-off jeans as shorts, barefoot if not wearing sandals with no sock, unshaven and maybe a tie-dye shirt, and just as cool as ever a human being you could ever want to hang out with. So I meet him in Oslo, and he's wearing a suit. He's very pristine, looking ultra chic and GQ, and he's one of the top grandmasters, if not top Swedish champions, visiting this tournament in Oslo. And I asked him what happened, and he goes, the late Grandmaster Lembit Ol. For those of you that didn't know Lembit Ol, he was very strong for his day. The late Grandmaster Lembit Ol. By the way, the word Ol is Norwegian for beer. So the late Grandmaster Lembit Beer, i.e. Ol, apparently was waiting for the elevator when the elevator doors opened, and Tiger Hillart Persson was standing in the elevator getting out. And Lembit Ol just sort of like looks him from head to toes with an expression of disdain or disgust or disappointment, one of those 3 Ds, and says to him, "This is why you're not a grandmaster." And Tiger Hillart Persson, of course, who's getting out of the elevator while Lembit Ol is getting on, possibly going to his hotel room for the last time, Tiger Hillart Persson decides to take his advice and say, clean up his act.
Yeah.
And he does take everything seriously, and he does pay attention to detail, not only when it suits him, but in everything that he does. He pays attention to detail in every aspect of his life. And this has actually worked for some of my other students as well. Basically, I remember I would go to a student's for a lesson, and I would see their room in a shambles, or we'd be at a hotel room and there would be stuff everywhere, and you could barely sit down to analyze the game, let alone find a space to lay out a chessboard. As well, you know now what it takes to become a master or a higher ranking player. Basically, if you can imagine the technical skill that Sam Shankland has, right?
Yeah.
Basically, I've had these students, and they clean up their act, and they start winning national champions after national championship after national championship. Maybe not multiple, but they win their share of the national championships. Once they start, and you should start paying attention to detail, not just when you feel like it, but as a matter of habit, as a matter of routine. Paying attention to the utmost detail is what you should be doing for a living, in chess, and as a way of life. And when I saw Sam Shankland struggling in this tournament, it took me a couple of rounds to notice that he was not paying attention to detail in every aspect of his life. He was only paying attention to detail in the aspect that suited him at chess. And I'm a huge fan of Sam Shankland, so I'm sending this message with the kindest of motivations that he is easily top 5 in the world material, but he is going to have to make attention to detail a way of life, and not just when he feels like it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Yes, I must admit I was
Needless to
a
say,
little bit dubious whenever, when you said I have advice for Sham Shanker, I was like, do tell, John, do tell.
I do have coaching advice for Sam Shanklin. I've coached players of all levels and of all rating levels. Whether or not we have time for Arian Tari to discuss my advice to him when he was on his road to becoming a very strong grandmaster. I believe he was only around 2475 or 20, just under 2500 when I gave him some advice over social media that may or may not have helped him directly or indirectly. But unfortunately, we're out of time this podcast for him to confirm or deny whether or not my advice helped him.
Yeah.
But next episode, we will have Arian Tari on, and we will square this one.
If Magnus Carlsen accuses enough people, Arian Tari might become the #1 Norwegian. It's,
Well, John Ludvig Hammer might actually get his act together as well.
Okay.
Because he was the #1 player in Norway before Magnus Carlsen rode into town.
Yeah.
Arian Tari was still in diapers then, though.
Yeah. Well, it's that's what streaming with the Botier sisters will do to you. It'll screw you up for life, apparently. Just cripple your chess talent.
It could. You never know.
It's an online lobotomy. It's death sentence. Anyway,
I'll nominate Arian Tari as one of the strongest grandmasters to pass up on a modeling.
I mean, Magnus Carlsen
when he had the chance, and he chose instead to go streaming with the Botez sisters, and I believe before that he had streamed with AK Nemsko. Okay. He had visited her in Toronto.
Another person to be jealous of.
And that
it's getting exhausting.
I know Arian Tari is just in our space, man.
I know, right?
He's just getting in our space. We'll have him on next episode. I'm sorry that we've run out of time to have him on now.
Yeah.
But
yes, obviously.
Next episode, we're going to have him on, and we'll clear up this battle.
Yeah, well, we got it. For
the most part. When I met Arian Tari, he was rated 2,000.
Yeah.
And that's 600-ish points ago.
Yeah, nothing like 600 elo to set you apart from other people.
Indeed, especially at that level.
Oh, especially at that level.
Anyway, I hope everyone pays better attention to details in their lives. I think the other motivational book, if I were to suggest anything, and as I often have to students outside of chess that could help their chess and their way of life better, besides getting coaching advice from a professional, would be to read Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book, which I'm now going to embark on Audible, called Be Useful. And I'm using Arnold Schwarzenegger, who himself was an avid chess player and an avid planner and an avid success-oriented person. Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, Be Useful.
I don't know how to
be useful.
I don't know how to do it.
Be useful.
Yeah, I guess.
Apparently, those were the words of advice from his father. One of the most important things his father said to him, be useful. And it's well worth checking out. I'm actually going to give a review of that later as far as how it will benefit your chess directly or indirectly next time.
All right.
Thanks, Rogan, for this podcast.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having you. Just for housekeeping purposes, and for the fact that I would feel bad if I didn't toot my own horn. I stream at Kingslayer Sloan on Twitch mostly every day, and Master Chess Dojo on Twitch also does the same thing. He does daily tournaments, he does teaching, he does analysis of the former world champions. He does absolutely everything you'd want out of a chess teacher. And
and all of that is available on YouTube as well. If you're not on Twitch, Master Chess Dojo on YouTube, all one. You can find all the
podcast will also be on there at some point. So with these thoughts and more, I shall leave you and have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Rogan. Have a great night.